former Fire Nation general turned kindly uncle and tea fanatic.
The secret ingredient is love.
The life of Iroh is one wild ride. With age comes experience, and Iroh caught our attention from the start as the gentle and down-to-earth mentor to the fiery Prince Zuko. It was fully thanks to Iroh that we got the excellent redemption arc for Zuko. And that's what we're here to see.
You did the right thing, nephew.
The teachings that molded the Crown Prince of the Fire Nation into the great Fire Lord that he became. Grab a cup of hot leaf juice and put away that pie show as we look into the best life lessons as taught by our beloved Iroh. Before we get into the really awesome and specialized technique that Iroh shows off as the series progresses, we have to start with the basics. Zuko was exiled at 13 years old, meaning he likely had a lot more training to go through in order to master his bending skills. Azula is a prodigy, and it's likely she still trains a bit. We do get to see some of Iroh's guidance right off the bat. In the first episode, we see him running Zuko through exercises that the prince would rather not do. Whether successful at the time or not, Iroh knew perfecting the basic moves was far more important than racing through to the advanced set. And when the young prince made mistakes, he was compared to no one, just corrected. Something he likely never got the luxury of when training side by side with his incredibly gifted sibling. And even if Zuko fought him at every turn, he still forced a little patience, making the prince wait until he had finished his meal before indulging him in his hot-headed desires. Speaking of Azula, one of the best lines from Iroh comes after Zuko laments that he knows that he should try and get along with his sister, and that's what his uncle likely wants him to do. Iroh surprises him with a very simple response. No, she's crazy and she needs to go down. Not what Zuko was expecting here from his more peaceful mentor.
You must let go of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away.
Thinking more about Iroh's history, it makes perfect sense that he would feel that way. His brother is Ozai, the Fire Lord. Also, Iroh comes from a legacy of empirical destruction. His opinion of such events has changed, as has his worldly perspective. He has seen the error of his ways, the true horror of his family's conquest. Iroh values his family. His love for Zuko and his own deceased son persists above all, but he knows that things must change. But some of his family will not change with it. He had faith in Zuko, and he was right. He doesn't share that sentiment with Azula or Ozai. Their desires for power rule over all other priorities, even their own family. Ozai had his own father killed and severely burned his own son. That family is many kinds of messed up. And maybe Zuko doesn't need that in his life. His honor is his own, not his father's, and Iroh was there to support him. If anyone needs workout motivation, look to Uncle Iroh. The man went from shaped like a teapot to Schwarzenegger real quick. True one-man army, Iroh was able to fight his way past a good number of guards without his bending. Just a straightforward physical fight. And it's likely that he's twice these soldiers' ages. The fireless Dragon of the West blew through them quickly. Likely, his knowledge of various bending and fighting styles gave him an edge over the less experienced warriors he faced, allowing him to be less predictable and use a variety of counter moves. Even so, one against many. The odds were not in his favor, but he escaped fairly unscathed. Afterward, he didn't waste much time, immediately aiding the White Lotus in the retaking of Ba Sing Se. His contributions to the war on the side of Team Avatar were immense. Iroh traveled a good amount of the world, and he certainly didn't ignore all of the culture and talent around him. This firebender understood deeply the balance of the four elements and what that truly meant. Each bending style is unique, but that doesn't mean their properties are exclusive to that element. Benders could learn a lot from each other. Even if they can only use one element, some of their techniques are transferable. As with the style of the waterbenders, something that Iroh used to develop his own technique to redirect lightning. In that lesson, he began to show Zuko that there were many different ways of approaching things. The elements are in a circle for a reason. The balance is needed for a reason. And a whole is always more powerful than a piece. Even imprisonment couldn't prevent Zuko's uncle from teaching him wise lessons. There is no escape, Zuko. You will learn and grow whether you like it or not. Anyway, Iroh left Zuko a little hint that he should look into the death of his great-grandfather. This whole puzzle irritated the young prince, as his ancestor, Fire Lord Sozin, died in his sleep. There didn't seem to be any great lessons. Then, Iroh dropped the bombshell that Zuko was descended from Avatar Roku on his mother's side. That wasn't the information that he was prepared to hear, especially with his mother having gone missing so long ago without a trace. So this new knowledge is dropped on the young prince, and he can now see his destiny isn't clear. There are more paths if he truly believes his destiny is within his legacy. One side longs for supremacy and the other wants balance. He can't do both. And the only person who can make that choice is Zuko himself. This is more practical survival than imparted wisdom, but still, I'm counting it since it's so cool. Iroh develops a counter to an incredibly powerful firebender technique, lightning bending, a scary and very deadly technique. It was that power that led to Azula nearly killing Aang and ending the Avatar cycle for good. Zuko knew that he would have to face his sister again, a bender who has mastery over this technique, so he asked his uncle to teach him. This would allow Zuko to channel the lightning through his own body and direct it elsewhere. Though this technique did not come in hand immediately, it was used in a couple of instances effectively. Firstly, protecting Zuko himself from a blast from Ozai that would have been lethal otherwise, allowing him to knock the Fire Lord into the wall. The second time we see it is when Zuko used the move to protect Katara from Azula. The move was not completed fully, as Zuko took on the charge rather than redirecting it to avoid harming his ally. Had he not learned from Iroh, that blow would have likely killed Zuko instantly. He was still gravely wounded, but Katara's healing was able to undo some of the damage done. This is 2 times this trick has saved Zuko's life, something that Iroh gets full credit for in creating this amazing counter move. The entire journey of Zuko and Iroh could be considered painful. The isolation, the physical elements, the not always kind weather, and not always consistent food sources. The two of them faced a lot of hardships over the course of the series. Things that they may not have ever dreamed they would be experiencing, and it takes a toll on a person. But Iroh understands that this is part of life. Transformation and growth are not something that could be called comfortable. So when Zuko does finally collapse after performing an action to help the Avatar, the person he's been trying to find and defeat for 3 years, it is a very drastic point of change. Iroh cares for his nephew and knows he will pull through. A bit of the trust the process type of situation. Face it head on and come out the other side better. Zuko learned a good deal about his own uncle on their journeys together. Iroh was not the most physically imposing man, having a figure that was not rippling with muscles, at least at the time, and a calm and slow demeanor. But this was a sneaky advantage that he wielded over his opponents. Such tactics of being underestimated proved useful in taking down a variety of opponents, including Admiral Zhao. This is more of a tactical skill for the former general, the true Dragon of the West. Like he said at the beginning of the series, firebending is about the breath, not the muscles. That's where the strength lies. Sometimes, many lessons can be learned in a short period of time. The episode Bitter Work certainly gave us a lot to ponder on. So Zuko tried to learn the technique of lightning. This technique requires a calm state of mind. Cold-blooded fire. Zuko at this time is still using anger to fuel his firebending, making this technique near impossible. Iroh tells him that he has to let go of his shame. When Zuko replies that he is as proud as ever, Iroh counters that pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame. His point highlights that many of Zuko's issues stem from his pride. He has shame because he is proud, and that pride further fuels the shame when he makes mistakes. He is a proud person who is exiled. He holds on to what he regards as his mistakes. Eventually, Zuko does heed his uncle's advice, though this lesson does take a long time to fully sink in. So, instead, he appeals to Zuko's pride for the time and teaches a move that even Azula doesn't know. Iroh doesn't get angry, not usually. He takes everything in stride with a calm smile and a cup of tea. His patience is astounding, but it was nearly certain that eventually Zuko would test his boundless patience. So Zuko goes on another grand scheme to catch the Avatar's bison, Appa, who has been kidnapped, or I guess bison-napped, and hidden under Lake Laogai. Iroh catches him in the act and lets him have it, and everything he says is right. His last words have both love and frustration for his nephew. He wants him to be better, not for Iroh, but for himself. And so, his words ring true. It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you, and what do you want? This is something that all should take to heart. It's what Iroh would want for us. The amount of warm and fuzzy feelings I get from Iroh is astronomical. Mentor figures don't get much better than this. It makes me want to see more of this caring bender. Maybe see more of his backstory. A solo series, possibly? Well, we can dream. For now, time for this brave soldier to march on home.